So just to confirm, we are all here to talk about a variety of different fundraising efforts. And I'm really not going to do a lot of the talking until the very end of this session. I have esteemed colleagues, fellow shedders on the stage. A tiny bit about me. I am Sherry. You know I'm Sherry. I joined Men's Sheds Canada at the end of 2025 as a fundraising and sponsorship consultant. I bring with me extensive experience both on the corporate side of things. So I have given out the money, and then I have also spent just over 12 years in the nonprofit sector. So seeking out money and funding. But you don't want to hear from me today. Who you want to hear from today are my awesome panelists. So with no further ado, we're going to start closest to me, I think. Yes, so John Guilfoyle. And then we're going to hear from each of the panelists, and they've got unique and interesting stories to tell about creative ways that they have fundraised and generated revenue, shifted the revenue model for each of their sheds. And so really, you don't want to hear from me, you want to hear from them what they've done. And then what I will do, like in the last 15 or so minutes, is I'll bring it all together and I will allow each of you to actually get involved yourselves. Because I know fundraising is scary, it's ominous, and we have been conditioned in society to think that if you need to ask for something, you must have some sort of a deficiency. And that is not the case. We also heard from Raza this morning, and we heard from Catherine, and then we recently heard from Karen that the time is now, right? So if ever there was a time to be a men's shed, looking for support, and I use support in a very general, broad sense, fundraising, space, you know what you need. Now is the time. We have landed on the government and lots of other folks' radar. So without further ado, over to you. Do you need a mic? Or yeah, stand over here. Absolutely.
When does the trapdoor go? Like when do we go?
But so I'll go to the back and I'll do my thing. Yeah.
Okay.
Take my
Okay. It's great to be here. I'm John Guilfoyle. I'm from Squamish, BC, which is an awesome place, and we have an awesome group of shedders there. Okay, what do I know about fundraising? Absolutely nothing. But I wanted to connect fundraising. Well, no, that's not totally true. But the point being, we can talk about funds and the money and how we get it. The most important thing about fundraising is to understand that the funds that we're raising and the currency we're spending is love. The money, even though it's important and we must get it and do it, the currency we're spending is love. Compassion and caring is exactly what we're spending. The world is totally short on that. We know the cost of everything, but the value of nothing. And so therefore, when we go to our funding and go to our fundraisers, we're going there with a different approach. This is not about doing something that is transactional. We're trying to make a difference in the world. We want to show that the dearth of caring and compassion in which we're nurtured as men is not working. It's not working in so many dimensions. And we need to begin to be that counterweight, to begin to say, hold on, we need a world where creating communities where people are valued, are contributing, and are making the place better. My dad said, leave the place a little better for the next fella. It's not complicated. So therefore, okay. And now Sherry she sent me an email and she's 4 or 5 things I have to cover. So I'm going to do that. Okay. So basically, in Squamish, one of our major fundraising efforts has been a relationship that we built through our local members who were members of, there's the Canadian Western Railway Museum, right? It's a big tourist draw. In the winter, particularly in Christmas, they have a Polar Express. They put a bunch of people on a train. They go into their museum. They disgorge them. And there's like a couple of hundred people with their kids going into this Christmas fair. What we did was our members created these little trains or logger trucks. And for 12 bucks a head, you could come in with your kid and we would supervise them banging the stovepipe on and putting the wheels on and cranking them in. And we would share the proceeds. We would get our cost of materials, and I think we charged 10%. But that was useful because we were selling over 1,000 trains. Okay, I mean, we're talking, this is Amazon here. Anyway, so that has continued for a number of years, and that's one of our major fundraisers. And if you were to ask me, what did we learn from it? Relationships. Where do your members have connections? What are the places where they have got a bit of nous and can go to somebody in charge and say, yeah, you've got an issue, we've got an issue. How do we work together? Is there something we can help each other with? And the benefits of that is that it got us community, exposure. You're there. There are people coming through from all over the lower mainland. They just don't come from Squamish. They come from Coquitlam. They come from all over. And we're there, and we've got the aprons on and the badge on, and we're there, banging stuff and getting kids to sand and all of that. And the smiles on the parents' faces as they see this sort of thing interacting is really interesting. And the notion, and we've had, I've been there. I've only been involved in the sheds for 2 years, so I really know nothing about the whole movement. But anyway, somebody come up. My kid has been here for the last 3 years, and they've got three of your trains at home. And the story with the kids is like, what color are you going to paint it? You know what I mean? This kind of stuff. So for the members, oh, sorry. So my apologies. Yeah. Somebody says, yeah, we don't give you a microphone. No, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. So that's basically, how am I doing for time here? Is there anything else I should be mentioning here, Sherry? Oh, so anyway, so as I was saying, the basis is building on the relationships that your community members have through the community, finding out what needs to be done, who has a need for a funding project, and then going and saying and working with them. What's fascinating about this relationship building, the director of the museum is now a member of our shed. So as you go out with your projects and fundraising, you're also recruiting. You're there. And when we say recruiting, you're not recruiting. You're just sharing a vision of making a better community. That's what you're doing, and how you say that and sell. We all the selling stuff, but how you share that with people depends on your level of understanding and the development your particular shed is at. Do you know what I mean? There's going to be a whole bunch of ways you're going to look at this, depending on the guys you're working with. Do you know what I mean? What makes sense? And so at various times, you're going to have various ways you're going to fundraise. And as you learn from that, you're going to change maybe the way you do that. You're going to learn as you as you go forward. And we're a culture of learning. That's what we're doing. We're learning together. We've never done this in the world before. How do we make sure that men, as an untapped resource, make a better world? Like just really make a better world. And the only way we're going to make a better world is one community at a time. Like we're not going to go out there and change the planet. But my heavens, if we do this in every community, can you see, the kids growing up, seeing that, that we just don't need screens, that we have actually people you can talk to and people who are doing something to just help a little bit. So I think the fundraising will come if we can echo that sentiment in a way that makes sense in the realities that you actually live in. Do you know what I mean? It's fine to talk about the 50,000-foot level I'm talking about here. How do you bring that down locally? Do you know what I mean? How do you make that make sense in the communities you're living in? And I know you've all got the capacity to do that.
Okay, buckle up and get your writing pens out, boys. Time to make some notes on how to make some money. There's those Vernon guys again. To tell you about the sleigh ride we've been on. Um, and last night I was thinking, we have one or two primary donors, and after a while that just makes you think that's how we did this. And then I started writing it down last night, and it's way more than that. And it's very something you can replicate. So I'm going to give you some pointers on where the money came from for us and where the money is coming from for us, and then you can start transposing that into your world. The first thing, as John said, is that we don't really talk about the money. The money is just the fruit of how can I help you? So pay a lot of attention in your shed. You're the leaders going home to the last session that we just finished. Get your story down. Start talking about it in your shed at coffee time. Listen to your men repeat the story back to you before they go home. Answer these 5 questions clearly as they relate to your shed, because then the word will go out consistently as a message from your shed to your community, because everyone is going to be different. What I tell you with the names of where the money came from probably won't impact you, but the way they came will. And then you can start taking that out as your message. But you have to get these answers and that last session into your own hearts and your own shed. And then it's going to start going. So, does your space define you, or do you define your space? Everybody in this place is in a different size facility. Some are, when there's 5 guys in the shed, your place is kind of full. We can start looking full at 30. But we just thought big to begin with, and that's probably the only difference. We just thought, well, I was retained by 8 manufacturers around the world in my sector to grow market share, and so I always thought, what do they want? What could I go get? And so I was thinking at the top end right from the beginning, and that's what we shot for. And so, again, are you defined by your space, or do you have another space in mind? And we always had 4,000 to 5,000 square feet in mind right from day one. And gentlemen, we're in 5,000 square feet. That's how that works, or it could work. So there's monetary and non-monetary gifts. And I've got some categories for you to sketch out. There's commercial, there's other nonprofits, there's foundations, there's private money, and there's member money. And I started making a list last night of where our money came from, and I categorized them that way. So in the commercial category, we got money from Elephant Storage in Vernon, storage company run by a family, really entrepreneurial guy. He's got his fingers in everything from car washes to storage to you name it. And we had a conversation with him one day in the truck, and the guy sitting beside me, we were talking on the speakerphone, and this guy called up to see what we were doing. And Lyle starts talking to him about suicide. And I thought, oh, you're going to scare this guy off. What are you doing? And the guy embraced it completely. And next thing I know, we were in a 24 by 30 foot square space with 14-foot doors. And it took 3 years to even start paying him a dime for the place, because he just had a really big heart and he wanted to help. And so then a little while later, we needed a container, and we got some money from the Regional District of North Okanagan through a grant to rent a container for 2 years on a program on recycling. And where did the container come from? Elephant Storage. Halfway through the program, he said, well, just stop paying me and keep it. So that's an example of commercial. A local siding contractor, commercial. He does 4 or 5 story walk-ups in a lot of places in remote communities. And he came in, no, he's been in 2 or 3 times now. Last time he came in, he had 3 skids of cedar 12 feet long that he gave us. We've made the darndest things out of that. And as a matter of fact, one of them will be a gift later today. And he's been in twice. Another time he came in with wood that you can't even get anymore and just offloaded it. We have 1,000 square feet of storage that has nothing but gifted lumber in it. So just start thinking about that. Commercial, Tolco, large lumber manufacturer, one of the larger employers and manufacturers around here. We call them anytime we want and tell them we have a community project that we need to build, and they say, "Come get the lumber." And they don't break skids; they just give us skids. So a couple more examples. Home Hardware just approached us recently, and we hosted our most recent sale there. And then we move into nonprofits. I'll give you a couple examples. Doctors Hockey Tournament. They came and all the dues for their hockey tournament started piling up year after year as the X's that didn't leave after the tournament. And they called us up and said, "We'd like to give you guys $5,000. And we said, "Well, that'd be fabulous." And they said, could you use more? And they said, "Well, you need a business plan for that." And we said, "Well, funny you should mention it. We're halfway through a business plan right now. Keep the money warm and we'll be right back to you." 90 days later, we said, "We're ready." And we went and did a PowerPoint pitch. And those gracious people gave us $25,000 because we told them what we were going to do with it. We had a vision, and that's because we had talked about it in the shed. A local dentist brought us a utility trailer that he had no time to upkeep himself, and he kept borrowing it for 20 years. And he said, "Would you guys fix this thing up? I'm embarrassed to borrow it from my neighbor." And so we cleaned it all up for him. New lighting, new welding on it, new paint jobs on the lumber and everything. Even delivered it back to him. He had no time to pick it up. And he said, "What do I owe you?" And I said, "Oh, we got a couple hundred in it. What do you, the rest is up to you." So he gave us an extra 1,000. And 2 years later, his wife called us up and said, "I was like a tour of your shed." We were at our new place by then, out of that 24 by 30. And so she came over and we spent an hour together and I walked her around. And when she left, she said, if you had been in this town when my dad was alive, he'd have lived 10 years longer." And she gave me an envelope and I didn't look in it. I said goodbye to her and promised to keep in touch because they wanted to. And I looked inside and there was $10,000 in it. Gentlemen, this just goes on and on. The North Okanagan Community Foundation, go make a relationship with your community foundation. There are 200 of them across Canada. They can even arrange to help you get charitable donation receipts. Work with your community foundation. It is a critical relationship. Ours is amazing. They not only issue receipts for us, they take us under the wing. They've given us some money. They help give us credibility. They know where the money is in your community to make appointments for you to have a sit down with people that want to get rid of their money. They will only donate people who are federally through their charity, through charities. So how, as a charity, we're not a charity through the federal government, but getting help through there is a third leg in BC. There is a third leg, 3 columns of relationships, and in our neighborhood, there's only a couple organizations in that third column, and we are one of them. And they are responsible for us, and they have they have a responsibility to the CRA for us. They only take on relationships that they really trust in that column, but they have the capacity to do it, and they've been issuing receipts for us for 8 years. Sherry, when do you want me to stop? Thank you. Okay. So those are nonprofits. Foundations. Jim and Laverne Popovich Foundation, a Saskatchewan boy who was going to spend his whole life on the farm. And his dad came home one day and said, I was just into the Saskatoon today and I hooked you up with the Department of Engineering and I got you a room at the dorm and you leave on Wednesday. And he was pretty choked. He went to school and he became the head of the Geology Association of Canada and the CEO of the Sparwood Coal Mine, and he's on the board of Mosaic with all the potash mines. And he had no kids and he did really well for himself. And one day he was standing at the door at Men's Shed Vernon because they had sent him down there from another nonprofit to get us to make something for him. And we went over to greet him and he said, your hand tools are terrible. He said, I'll be back in an hour. And he came back in an hour with an armload of Makita Professional and dumped them on the table and said, then, gentlemen, there'll be more. And that started a sleigh ride of a relationship with Jim and Laverne. And he would get us to build stuff for the other nonprofit and grossly overpay us. And then we moved into our new place and he paid $50,000 for tenant improvements for us to move in. He paid a year's rent in advance for us. Because, gentlemen, when a rainmaker, don't underestimate the capacity of a rainmaker to walk in your door that will amaze you with their generosity. And they have so much money that they're serving it like the Walton Trust, and they have to unload it. And that's not like they're looking for people who are credible and earnest and honest, and they want to participate. And this gentleman did that, and then he got cancer, and we sat around the table at the shed and had coffee for several months while he was working, as he called it, I hit a gravel patch. And he made a commitment to us for 5 years posthumously. And Laverne honored it because it was a handshake. And I was talking to Laverne the other day because the 5 years is up and we've saved it all. We haven't spent his money. We've saved it for a building or something like that. We've honored the request. And I was talking to Laverne the other day for my annual conversation because we publish an annual report with all our financials so that we can send them to our supporters. You should do that. And she said, because, by the way, her investment counselor wanted to see our report because her investment counselor wanted to tell her that she should continue supporting us and honor Jim's request. If we were not credible, he'd have told her to ditch us. And so the other day she said to me, were we supporting you for 5 years or 10? And I said 5. And she said, well, let me take a look. I just finished making, no, it's till 2030. That is so humbling. We have a name tag, an honorary name tag on the door waiting for her anytime she comes in. She's a very modest person. I get to sit with her once in a while at a fundraising event. Happened to be at the same table a year ago with my wife. And these are marvelous people. And they just have money. Don't fault them for it. Bring them in. Okay, a couple more before I sit down. My 2 minutes is going to be up. Collaboration with the local schools. They have money. In some places, they have money for programs. We've got a few times now, we've been working with the local school district, and they'll bring you a chaperone and several kids that are on strike 3 with the school system. They don't fit. They're wonderful. They're brilliant. They're misunderstood. They may have a couple of challenges, and they have a chaperone and they have budget. And they come into our shed for 5 or 6 weeks at a time, and they pay a stipend to come in with the chaperone, and we build stuff, and they light up like light bulbs, and we get paid for it. And we light up like light bulbs helping them do it. And then the chaperone joins the shed. Okay, so I mean, and then there's money attached to it. A couple of last ones. The Ford Family Foundation. Who are the foundations in your neighborhood? The Ford Family Foundation is in our neighborhood. They own Cal Tire, and they give to the community, and we've pitched them 3 times now, and we have 2 3D printers, we have a laser engraver, and the latest CNC machine, and we apply for that every year because we want to attract younger men and we need newer tools. And the last one I'll leave you with is the 100 Women Who Care. 100 Women Who Care all gather 4 times a year, and every time they gather for cider and munchies, they each bring $100, which means there's $10,000 sitting in the room. And they invite 3 charities to come for a 5-minute stand-up each. And at the end of the 15-minute stand-ups, they all vote. And the winner takes the 10 grand home. And we have a $9,000 planer sitting on the floor with their name on it. And a bunch of lawyers walked in the door on Giving Tuesday, which is after Black Friday, and said, our staff have adopted you for this Giving Tuesday. What do you need? And I said, well, I don't know how big your staff is. On one end of the scale is a $100 gift certificate from Home Hardware would be great. And on the other end, here's a picture of a $2,300 bandsaw I'd really like to have. Giving Tuesday came along and they showed up with the $100 gift certificate and the $2,300 bandsaw. So gentlemen, get into the ask business. There's people that want to come up alongside you, and I've got more, but I've taken too much time. Thank you.
Thank you. That was moving. Actually, I want to start by saying I'm probably envious to some degree of the previous speaker. My story is going to be slightly less involved than that. I would think. I'll start by giving my name. Sorry, my name is Harry, and I'm with the Tri-Region Men's Shed, which is located in Spruce Grove, Alberta. And it's called Tri-Region because it encompasses 3 different geographical areas. It is Spruce Grove itself, Stony Plain, and the county of Parkland in itself. So that's how we get the term Tri-Region, sort of thing. We have approximately 60 members on the, shed attendants within the organization. We usually only have about between 10 and 15, I'll say, who come on a regular basis. I've been with the shed for about 2 years. I was not there in the inception of it. So with respect to the funding that we're going to talk about, I was not there for the initial funding. It's my understanding that there were a number of grants that came our way, one of them being the New Horizons grant, of course. That's one, and I believe we've received that twice. We've gotten that twice. We've also gotten some funding from the city of Spruce Grove itself. We're good buddies. We're good friends with the city of Spruce Grove, and that helps a lot. They like us, and we like them, and we know the mayor and the whole 9 yards there. So that helps quite a bit. There's immediate and direct contact there. They give us, I believe, the city of Spruce Grove, I believe, gives us $10,000 per year. So, and that will probably continue. It's my understanding that we received the New Horizon grant twice, but we are not going to get it another time. And there's probably a reason for that somewhere along the line, but I'm afraid I'm not exactly familiar as to why that is. I do have an application for the New Horizons. It's obviously it's online. It can be done. And a lot of you are probably familiar with what New Horizon. You've heard that term, I suspect. We are within a building. We're within a bay, if you will, of a strip mall, and in a couple of days we have to pay someone rent for that building. So right off the bat, we don't like that person. It would be really nice if we could, if it was rent free. It would change the dynamic within the shed itself, because we wouldn't have that burden, if you will, of the commitment, that commitment or that requirement, I guess would be the word. For that reason, because we've gotten the funding that I've already mentioned, we've been sustaining ourselves with respect to that, as well as a number of projects that carry us through the year. We've had quite a few. Some of them are a lot of them, as a matter of fact, or some of them, I'll say, are connected to the Spruce Grove District Agricultural Society, and that is where, if you're familiar with Spruce Grove, that's where the grain elevator is. And all that property. So it's a public facility, obviously, and we've been fortunate enough to be connected to them, and do a various a number of projects for them and stuff like that. We have some upcoming things. I'm going to talk to you about I'm going to use the word transition, and I'm going to talk to you about that in a minute. But our biggest concern, or our biggest debt, is of course the rent in itself, and it's about the area that we use is approximately twice the size of a double garage, if you will. So that gives you an idea of the scope of it. We don't have near the I'll use the term assets of the previous speaker that you heard. We don't have near the terms of that or the scope of that at all. It's a smaller situation. Only about half of the members who attend regularly are productive, if you will. That is to say, that in working in the back of the shop, and that's okay, because the men's shed is a very we're not all the same. We already know that there's going to be individuals who come in and they're there for social hour, if you will, and that's just great. But the individuals who are involved, and particularly the board and so on, is responsible for paying the bills, if you will. And we've had, as mentioned before, there's a number of donations that come your way. We've received a lift of lumber. That obviously helps a lot, that sort of thing. But what we have to do as a shed, in my opinion, we have to transition into revenue generating to some degree, because as already mentioned, we didn't get the New Horizon grant. That's not, and then perhaps that's probably not coming again, I suspect. And it was quite a substantial fund, as some of you may know. It made a huge difference, but that's not coming our way anymore. So we have to diversify a bit and put our heads together, as it were, and transition into, I hate using the word business, because it's not a business, is it? It's a group of men that get together and accomplish various things. And we're all, you and I are different. We're different. We don't have the same car. We don't have the same favorite color. Nothing like that. We're all different. So we're accommodating a number of people at the same time. But the word revenue keeps coming back up for me, and we're going to transition into that by expanding our market, if you will. And you've heard mention about different social groups and so on that every community probably has, and we're going to transition into those to some degree. That's for sure. One of the primary ones, and again, is with the Spruce Grove and District Ag Society, and they're starting a venue there called Market at the Elevator. And what it is, there used to be a farmer's market there, and they've since vacated that property. So it's allowed the Ag Society to bring in its own separate entity, if you will. And it's called Market, again, it's called Market at the Elevator. And our proposal, and my proposal, and our proposal is that we start making stuff. To put it in pretty basic, simple terms, we start making things for the purpose of revenue generation, and it's an absolutely feasible thing. And you'll hear numerous stories about we've done this and we've done that and so on and so on. So does it work? Well, obviously it does. Obviously it does work. Thanks, Sherry. That's okay. It does work. So that's where we're going to go. We're going to go in that direction. Do we want the men's shed to stay? Of course we do. Is it going to stay? Of course it is, but it's not free. The gentleman who was sitting here earlier, Doug Taylor, who is our fearless leader, as it were, Doug knows a lot about more. He's with the MSA now, so but Doug knows a lot more about the actual fund, the grant generation and that sort of thing. Doug's more familiar with that. I am as well, but not nearly to that extent. So do we continue looking for grants? Yeah, of course we do. You know, we carry on with that as well and pursue different avenues and so on and so on. There's a ton of information in this room. It goes on and on and on, and we've probably all got a different avenue that we could take or at least, most of us could, I suspect, as to how we might make a buck, so to speak. And again, I hate to break it down to sounding like it's a business, because it's not. We know it's not. I really hope to get to Vernon one of these days. The first day I think was sort of devoted to focusing on Vernon. And I can assure you the next time I'm going through Vernon, and I will, I'm going to stop in at Men's Shed, and I know they'll welcome me there, because I really want to see this. I really want to see this place. I doubt very much that we'll ever get to that scope. At least certainly not within the building we're in. As mentioned, it's two double garages. So there's limitations as to equipment, first of all, obviously, right? We're not going to have an assembly line of table saws and so on and so on. So we've got to be a little cautious in that respect. But we do have high hopes, and we have them for a very good reason, because we know we're going to get there. Again, we know the Men's Shed is not going anywhere. It's going to stick around, and we'll be there, and I'll be there, and Spruce Grove will be there, and the Tri-Region will be there. And my associates sitting here, I'm sure they'll be there as well. So thank you very much for your time. I hope that was helpful to you in some respect. Thank you.
I feel like the rose among thorns, or the thorns among roses, whatever you want to call that. So I don't know that I can add very much to what's been said here. My name is Diane Stonehawker. I actually work with Punch Jackson at the Alberta Men's Shed Association. But my history with men's sheds goes back before that. I was involved with the instigation of the Cold Lake Men's Shed, and I'm not a member of a men's shed. I was around when we helped to get it started. And the story that I'm going to tell you about the Cold Lake Men's Shed, we're going to focus mostly in this conversation about how funding gets started for a shed. I hope someday to have all of that at the Cold Lake Men's Shed, but let me tell you how it started. So in 2018, a group of people, retired people in Cold Lake, actually got together at an FCSS office. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to tell you the story, and I want to see if we can pick out from my story the pieces that might be relevant to fundraising, and you'll see that come along. So we met together at an FCSS office and said, what's still lacking for seniors in this community? We were all getting towards that age, and we all wanted to know what we could do better for seniors, including ourselves in the future. And so one of those people who came to that table that first day was Wayne Warner, who some of you may have met. And he had brought information that he had received from, or he had seen, about Australian men's sheds. And so he said, I think we should have one of these in Cold Lake. So as we're all sitting around this table, we said, yeah, whatever we put together, it should include a men's shed. You know, we had all these ideas of programs that we should operate. And so ultimately, I'm going to try and make this long story short. That's what we did. We put together an agency called Age Friendly Cold Lake, and it started out as, you know, an agency was one person and a few other things. But so we put it together. But one of the main things that we ran up the flagpole first off was the Cold Lake Men's Shed. And it was the Cold Lake Men's Shed that actually got us the notoriety in the community, even though we were focused on other services for seniors. The only one the community was interested in really was the Men's Shed. So Wayne had a good friend in the community who had been owned a big construction company, had oodles of money, frankly. And Wayne told him about men's sheds, and he offered us some space. And so the space is about the size of this, maybe not quite as long, but it's a big shed. And he offered it to the Cold Lake Men's Shed for free, for as long as we wanted to use it. And so at the front of this space was a couple of offices. So frankly, age-friendly Cold Lake snuck into the building with the men's sheds and squatted right there, took advantage of this free space. To this day, that's 6 years later, they are still there. The Age Friendly Cold Lake, a much bigger organization than it was, and the men's shed are still there. We're using this free space that was provided by a local man who was very generous, and you've all talked about that. That's kind of that's been totally important for everything that's gone on there. So let me cut to the chase here a little bit in terms of fundraising. Well, that immediately made it not as necessary for the men's shed to do fundraising because the rent is free. And so that cuts down the cost, as you can imagine, substantially. But one of the early things we decided to do to create some operating money for the men's shed, because we had a space, but there was no money to do anything with, they came up with the notion of having an ice fishing tournament. Now, I want you to picture a couple of offices up there with women social workers, and somebody came up with an idea of hosting an ice fishing tournament. And we're going, why would anybody do that in the first place? Go ice fishing, it's just cold there. But we figured in Cold Lake, which, have any of you been to Cold Lake or been fishing on Cold Lake? It's a beautiful big lake and has luscious fish if you like fishing. And not a big deal for me, but it's a big deal. And it's whoever donated that prize that I won yesterday with the fishing hooks. I don't know if that was any of you in here. There you go. My husband is so excited about that. I gave him to him. He's so excited. Anyway, so we put together this ice fishing tournament, and it was for the Cold Lake Men's Shed, frankly, because, again, they were the ones out there in front. We had this agency going on behind, but everybody wanted to know and care about the Men's Shed. So we put together this ice fishing tournament, made a boatload of money. To be perfectly honest, made a boatload of money. And ended up with lots of money for the men's shed and lots of money for age-friendly Cold Lake. I have 3 minutes left. And so then, so I'm not going to take your question because I have 3 minutes left, if that's okay. Take the question. Ice fishing tournament. Event registrations, community, corporate sponsorship for the ice fishing tournament. Yeah, all kinds of ways. I don't know if any of you have run tournaments before, but there's a million ways to make money at a tournament. Most of it having to do with corporate sponsorship, but they did though. Now, to be perfectly honest, I'm going to admit the men's shed volunteers themselves did not run that ice fishing tournament on their own. But the money was going to them. We had community volunteers, but we've had that ice fishing tournament now 6 years in a row. It makes a bigger boatload of money than it ever used to. It's become a thing across the province, to be honest. We're allowed 400 people, anglers, at that ice fishing tournament by Fish and Wildlife. That they won't let us have any more than that, and it sells out in 4 hours last year. People coming, and it makes a lot of money. And because of you remember the original benefactor, he was committed mostly to the men's shed. So we made a commitment, and I say we, it's when I worked at Age Friendly. We made a commitment to that man that if we could use that space for free, that every year we would give them a budget to operate on. And so it represents a community partnership, if you will. If you have an organization in your community who you could partner with to do an ice fishing tournament, or some kind of a tournament, some kind of a fundraiser, and then share the profits with, or have them commit a certain percentage to it. That's the lesson, I think, about the ice fishing tournament. It is an opportunity to work with another organization or two organizations, add your labor. And I'll never forget the guys in the men's shed made the ice fishing shack in the shed that we raffled off and made $8,000 on, or they made $8,000. So anyway, I'm cutting to the chase here. Partnering organizations are huge. The Men's Shed and Age Friendly Cold Lake are still connected. And that could be a whole session on its own, how to work in actual structural partnership with an organization. Upsides and downsides. It removes some of the financial issues that you have to deal with, but it's relationship based. Find a benefactor if you can. Hold some kind of a tournament or do it in partnership with others. There's lots of money to be made out there doing that kind of thing. If it's about fishing, apparently there's a lot of money to be made on fishing. I'm not sure how that works. I don't get it, frankly, but there you go. And again, you're not going to do it yourself. A tournament's a big deal. It takes a lot of volunteers, but if you can partner with other organizations, volunteers with those who are doing it, then it works great. New Horizons for Seniors has been mentioned. Get to know your politicians, help them to know. I honestly believe that this is all going to get easier and easier as time goes by, because who doesn't love a men's shed? Corporately, they're standing up out of the woodwork to try and help. I think it's going to get easier and easier to provide the funding. We also get funding from, have gotten funding, one-time funding from individuals who, my dad committed suicide and he wouldn't if there been a shed. So she hosted a golf tournament and all the proceeds went to men's sheds. We also have this thing, I don't know, maybe it happens to you guys as well, where a man dies in the community and the wife phones the men's shed and said, there's a whole garage full of stuff out there. Absolutely. Come and get it. So they come and get it. They don't need most of it because their shop is fully, put together. They have a garage sale and they sell it. So I don't think you can really ask for that kind of thing, but when it happens, take advantage of it. So like I said, I think this is going to get easier, learn from each other, take the opportunity to be brave, as the gentleman on the left there said, be brave. Just go ask for what you need and sell them a product here that everyone loves. Really, I've never had any difficulty talking men's sheds to anybody. They all go, that's awesome. I have never heard anyone say, well, that's dumb, ever. And there's money out there available for good causes, and this is the best. So thank you.
Amazing. So thank you to Ray and to Harry and to Diane and to John. Sorry. For your stories, for your inspiration. The one thing that you did not hear from anyone was this idea around the numbers, right? So a recap to this session, which I don't think I need to take everyone through. But in the last sort of 20 or so minutes, what we're going to do is bring this all together, right? So you've heard a whole host of different ways that different sheds at different places in the life cycle of their existence fundraise, how they generate revenue, right? And the one thing that you didn't really hear a lot about, except for maybe the dollars here and there, were the numbers, right? So let's turn what you just heard into momentum so that you guys can walk away with some actionable ways that you can go back to your respective sheds, whether they're just starting out or they've been around for a while. And let's see how we take out the onerous task of asking, right, for money, because it's a bit of a scary proposition to ask for money. All right. Sorry? You don't need Jerry Maguire, because here's what you guys have already. You have stories, you've got impact, and you've got proof, right? And so we heard from these 4 speakers about a host of different ways to fundraise. And so they're on here. This is a word cloud of fundraising that really speaks to a whole variety of ways that you can generate revenue, okay? But let's get really specific now. So I want to hone in on 4 different areas, some of which you've already heard from or about, and others you haven't. So community fundraising and donations. We've heard a lot about that. It's really simple. You partner with existing organizations in your community, right? Okay. Sponsorships. Similar to partnering with organizations in your community is where you're looking for an event. You're looking for a sponsorship of an actual thing that's going to happen in your community, okay? Grants. We've all heard about New Horizons. Not everybody is a grant specialist, and we're going to get to that in a moment in terms of why every one of you can leave this room today completely ready to fill out a grant application. And I know that sounds like, what is she talking about? I've never filled out one of those in my life. How am I in the next 20 minutes going to be fully equipped to do so? And I'm going to show you how. And then estates and legacy planning. Okay, so this, I'm going to say to you, is an untapped gold mine. And you started to hear a little bit about it from our panelists this morning in terms of being able to entrench yourself in the community and then start to think about how you connect with folks who are looking for ways to then leave money behind and leave their legacy. Okay? And so again, what does it all come down to? It comes down to the stories and the ask, not the numbers. All right, so what makes people say yes? And it's really, really straightforward. It's a clear fit and alignment that we've heard about today, that we've actually heard about for the last couple of days, right? Real impact. There's no question in anybody's mind that men's sheds are generating and making a difference in each of their respective communities. The impact is beyond obvious, but I want to show you how you package and sell it. Credibility goes together hand in hand with that real impact, and then you want to create a simple, doable plan. So this is the big moment for you in terms of the ahas, right? You have heard today, this morning from Raza, you heard specifically that there, to the tune of $77,000 is the goodwill generated, the real revenue, the value of having a shed in a community, okay? And that number, by the way, is only going to go up as time goes on and we not become more known, but our network will expand. So the more members, the greater the impact, right? Okay. So it's the stories that matter. It's not really the numbers. We've got the statistics to demonstrate, to reinforce, to lend credibility. But the reality is, it's the stories. When we listened to David yesterday morning, he didn't tell us anything about the numbers. What does he talk to us about? The stories. And I dare say there were moments of time in the room yesterday where there may not have been a dry eye in the room. And that's the gold right there. It's the stories that we can all tell, and it's then how you package and you sell that story, how you package and you deliver that story, how you package and share that story to folks that are external to men's sheds that starts to make the difference. All right, so the simple questions to ask go back to even very synonymous with what Raza took us through this morning, right? The who are you? The what does your shed do? Why does it matter? And then the ask, right? And so I've got the title of this as Keep the Ask Simple. But if your takeaway from today is one thing, remember KISS, K-I-S-S. Keep it simple, stupid. So you know that the sheds work. We all know that the sheds work. We know this model is successful. And all we have to do is create a soundbite of a story that we can take externally. Think about it as your elevator pitch. Some of you will have heard in past lives, if you had to sort of bring all the essence of an organization, of who you are, of a community group together, it's that elevator pitch that if you were stuck in an elevator with somebody, that you could do full justice to that time by telling them about men's sheds that would change their life because they didn't know about men's sheds before they got in the elevator and were stuck with you. And now they can't believe how they didn't know about men's sheds before they got in the elevator. All right, so you keep it simple. You start small, you tell your story, you ask clearly. Like, that's it. That's what it means to fill out a grant application. That's what it means to pitch a presentation like Ray mentioned when they created a PowerPoint, fundamentally, it all boils down to the same thing. So here we go. You're going to turn to your partner on your left or the right of you. You're going to make your ask, and then you're going to switch. Okay? I know, I'm putting you on the hot seat, but it's just this simple. You all know, sitting in your seats, what your shed needs, what your shed wants. Okay? I'm going to give you 3 minutes where you think about it yourself. Okay? And then when the clock stops, I'm going to ask you to turn to your left neighbor. For those of you sitting at a table where there is only you, join a table where there are other people. And you are going to have 60 seconds to tell them what it is that you need to make that ask. So let's go back to this slide here. Who are you? What does your shed do? Why does it matter? And what do you want? And don't leave out the greatest, the biggest, most significant piece of this, which is the ask. So many times we tell our stories of who we are and what we do and what we need, but we fail to actually say, we need to cover our rent for the next 6 months. And our rent is $1,000 a month. So we're looking for $6,000. That took about 7 seconds. I mean, I could tell you all the other stuff, like who I am and what does my shed do and why does it matter. But if you can't get to the most important point, if you can't get to nail, this is what we need, this is what we want, I'll tell you one thing, you'll never get it. And because this is scary, I'm going to dispel the notion of scary from this. I'm going to extract it. And I'm going to have you think about the fact that what is the absolute worst that can ever happen? They say no. And you are going in before that meeting, before that conversation, before filling out that grant application, there was effectively no funding coming in. So what could be possibly worse? Well, you end up with a no, which is the worst case scenario, but you've had a conversation, you've opened a door. And so guess what? It's a soft no, because no, in this case, never really means no. Maybe you'll take, right? Okay, so I'm going to give you a couple minutes. Actually, before we do this, does anybody have any questions on any of what I've just said before we get started? Okay, so I will give you 120 seconds to think about what it is that you want. And then I'm going to give you 60 seconds to turn to your neighbor. So the clock is on. You got 2 minutes. Think about what it is that you want, what it is that you need. Who are you? What does your shed do? Why does it matter? And then the ask. Thanks. Don't go away. Don't go away. Okay. Oh, okay. You got about 20 seconds left to craft your pitch. Short announcement to make, where you let everyone go for lunch. Okay, perfect. Okay, time's up. Time's up. That was pretty easy, right? I mean, it's not hard to craft the story around what you need because you're speaking about something from your heart. You're speaking about something you know passionately about. You know intimately what it is that you want and you need. Okay, you ready to make your pitch? You ready to make your ask? All right, 60 seconds. Let's go.
They're actually the guys that helped start our day. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. How'd that go? You guys done? Time's up. You had your 60 seconds. I want a show of hands from those of you who made your pitch and didn't get a no. And how many of you got a maybe, but not a no? And how many of you got a yes? All right. Okay. So I think it goes without saying, guys, I think it goes without saying that when you have to do this and you break it down and you simplify it, it's not that hard, right? And the reality is it doesn't need to be perfect. You just need to start. And sometimes, as so many of us know, to do anything that is even remotely scary, where there is an unknown outcome, we would much rather just not do it. Because it's so much easier. But nothing ventured is always nothing gained. All right. So Men's Sheds is already making a difference. If you need the numbers, there are no end of numbers and statistics to substantiate your story. But I think if there's one thing we've learned over the last couple of days is that the stories, the real life, true stories, at the end of the day, are what is going to resonate externally. And you've all got a plethora, an abundance, no end of stories to tell. So you just need to connect the dots between the stories, who your shed is, and what you want. And that's it. And I know you may have been coming to this session thinking I was going to give you the holy grail on how to do this. Well, I'd like to think I just have. Because it's breaking down that barrier of being able to ask. And in some cases, we heard from our panelists that they didn't need to ask because the stories are so compelling that they build the relationships based on our stories, and the stories become self-fulfilling prophecies. It's circular. And so sometimes you need to be really articulate about what you want, and sometimes it gets handed to you on a silver tray, on a silver platter. But at the end of the day, it's the combination of the two. That's it for me. We've got about 5 minutes, so I'm happy to take questions. I'm also happy to have panelists entertain questions. I know you had your question. Yes, I was going to come back to you first. So a quick answer in response to your question, and this is actually really new for Men's Sheds Canada and Men's Sheds. I think your question effectively was, what happens if we as a men's shed, and please correct me if I'm paraphrasing wrong, what happens if we as a men's shed are obviously not a charity, and we get money that is going to come to us as a shed, but they want it to go to a charity, they want a tax receipt? Is that?
So, yeah, because we are.
Oh, sorry. It's turned on. Testing.
Because of the fact that we are just registered as a society provincially, we're not registered under the CRA.
Correct.
The foundation, our foundation, anyway, they haven't quite adapted to donating to outside of charities that are
Yes.
not under the CRA.
Okay.
So I get the legacy thing where if we've found a person who was, wanted to donate their funds so they donate it to the foundation, but they say, okay, foundation, we want any proceeds from my donations to the foundation to go to Men's Shed. But how outside of that could we take advantage of the community foundations?
So it's a great question. So effectively, the question is, there's money that could come to your shed that is coming from an organization that wants the CRA connection for their benefit, right? Their benefit. So they want a tax receipt and you can't generate a tax receipt. Okay. So what I will tell you is that we have just in the last couple of weeks finalized a process for how we can, as Men's Shed Canada, get involved to help you with that, because we are the charity and individual sheds are not. You will be hearing way more about this in the weeks to come, but we will help facilitate that process whereby you can still receive the monies from an organization that wants a tax receipt. We will take the funds and we will issue the tax receipt, and then we will pass the funds on to you. And there is a process that we have just created and set up. So it's effectively done. Yeah, so anyone. Yes.
They will not donate money. Our foundation will not in this particular moment.
Yep.
Will not donate money to a unless they're registered with CRA.
Right. And so all I'm suggesting is that Men's Shed Canada can be that intermediary for you. So the money can come to us and then we can then pass it back to you. We've developed a process that is all kosher, above the line. We get to give them the tax receipt. You get the funds. There are details, obviously, in terms of finer details and fine print around the machination of how we do this so that we keep it all above the line. But we've figured out the process. We've got it blessed by a legal representative. So we are doing it all on the up and up, and you will hear about it more in the weeks to come. Because the reality for each of you to go out and become charitable organizations is not feasible. What's our timeline? So
CRA, there's an initiative at CRA, start enabling community foundations to exercise much more latitude in their communities. And some community foundations are more aggressive at that than other conservative ones. And I know that even from the Okanagan, there's a range. There's 3 or 4 in the Okanagan, and not all of them are as aggressive as the one we live under. They're aggressive. But I assure you, they will not do anything that jeopardizes their CRA status. They will always stay within that. They have $25 million and they give away the proceeds of that. Another really important value for community foundation. Since I went to my lawyer and redid my will, something you should do every 5 years or so, take a look at it. And in my will now, instead of leaving something to some charity I don't like as much as I did 5 years ago, I simply say in the will, please leave this many dollars or this percentage of the estate to whatever the letter on file at the community foundation says. And I can change that letter for free any day of the week without making a codicil to the will, which costs $500. So I go to the community foundation, I say, I want you to give the money to this one and this one and this one, and then they can be anywhere in North America. And they can be my men's shed, they can be a church, whatever, and several days later, I changed my mind. And I will go back and I change that, and it doesn't affect my will at all. And they can administer that money for me. I can give it away over a 10-year period. I can give it away in a lump sum. I can give it away as a trust. And the community foundation is a wonderful vehicle for that. And you can encourage your members, and we get the community foundation to come in and talk to our members and say, gentlemen, one of your grandchildren, could you scooch over a little bit because I want to leave a couple grand to the shed when I die. Or I want to leave 100 grand to the shed when I die. And the community foundation will facilitate that any way you want, whether it's a shed or anything else. And I have done it, and it's really valuable.
As a community foundation director and as the president of the Net Dairy, that's really good information. That's excellent.
Awesome. Okay, I think we've got time for probably 2 or 3 questions.
Yeah, couple of things I just sort of tag on to the fishing derby. It sounds like a lot of times for us and for people who are starting out in sheds that you're throwing the fishing line out there and see what hooks and
Yes.
pulling in somebody in, right? So I'm
Great
thinking
analogy.
I'm thinking of something else. I'm thinking of inviting them to your shed. So they need to, we mentioned the word awareness a couple of times here over the last couple of days. So how do you build awareness? So before you perhaps meet that somebody that make that elevator pitch, which we all have that ready, is we have open houses at Vernon. The last we had one in November, we had one in September, in March, and we drew in, I can't remember how many, let's say 50, 60 people. Some business owners bring in their father, and then we got to know not just the father who might become a member, but also the business. And they're saying, oh, now we can contribute. They offer me wood, they offer me space on the spot. Okay, so you don't know. The other thing is, how do you get that awareness? One thing that I've done at the Vernon as much as I can is I talk to Global News, I talk to CBC, our radio, our newspapers, as much as I can say, what can you do for us? We're a nonprofit. And I put in marketing, I put in an open house notice, let's say, in our newspaper, and they get other companies to sponsor it. It doesn't cost me a cent. All of a sudden, that awareness, and they're in our shop to visit.
So great.
Just a couple of thoughts before you can get the ask. You need to meet those people. That's just one way to bring them in.
No. So here's what I'm going to dispel the notion of is you don't need to, in fact, do not wait till you get the right person in front of you. I think we heard from, I think it was Ray, who mentioned that somebody showed up at their shed and unbeknownst to them was, who has turned into one of their largest benefactors. Am I correct? Right. So unbeknownst to you, every day that folks walk into your shed, you could be dealing with a gazillionaire, right? And so don't wait for that perfect moment when you're stuck in the elevator with Bill Gates, because that's likely never going to happen. Make sure your asks, I'm going to give you a task of going back to your respective sheds and coming up with 3 solid asks that are bulletproof. You got them ready to go. So no matter who or what you are encountering, you are ready to do what you need to do. And then going back to your point about awareness, yes, is awareness building critical? Of course it is, but that takes time. Where you saw today, 60 seconds, as long as you've got that ask, you can make it to anyone at any time. I want to keep going because I think we got 2 more.
Good morning. So as my second career, I manage large corporations, 25,000, 30,000 employees. And their biggest problem was they make trillions of dollars and they need to donate millions and millions of dollars. And they can't find recipient.
Correct.
We're talking about BC Hydro, BC Gas, all the oil companies here have that same problem. When I was in Fort McMurray, I worked for Paramount Resources. When they hired me, they didn't know who I was, except for my resume. And the first thing they said to me, they said, while you're out there, make sure you keep your ears open for somebody we can donate money to. My contract for that day, for the project I was in, was $180 million, 4 months' work. To give you $5,000, it's just like that to them. They need like 600 of us to be able to give $1 million or 3. So what we're doing is we're not asking them, we're giving them the opportunity to donate us the money. Because that's what they're in the business of doing, because their contract with the government says, you make all these $1 billion, that's fine with me, but you got to give some back.
Amazing. Thank you for that point. And it brings up another thought that I have that I'm going to share with you very, very quickly. So I mentioned at the outset that I've been both on the corporate side and the nonprofit side. I spent over 20 years in the corporate sector, large national brands, for-profit businesses, RBC, CIBC, JP Morgan Chase, Rogers, you name it. I've kind of done it and sat on the side where we needed to give away the money. And I will tell you, one of the single largest challenges for big corporate organizations is finding places to give their money that is aligned with their own mandates. So this is getting really, really granular, and there'll be more to come on this topic. But as part of your plan, what you need to do in each of your respective communities is learn about the corporates that are based near you or in the same location, town, city, and find out when their fiscal year ends. Because all different industries have all different fiscals, which means that they don't necessarily run on a calendar, January to December. And the best times to make pitches are at the nearing the end of their fiscal, because they've got all this money and they've got to get rid of it. And you have no idea how big of a problem that is. Next question.
I don't know. Jerry Hennings from the Kamloops Men's Shed. First of all, I want to say that Vernon Men's Shed was our mentor. So when we walked into their shop, we were devastated by what we seen. It was so big and massive and scary and everything else. Beautiful shop, you guys. Anybody goes there, go. Anyway, in Kamloops, what we did to get one of our grants through Help Age Canada, we had to have that registration number. And we worked the community. We went to the Legion, couldn't do it because it was through the Yukon. We went to the mental health thing. The guy was on side, and then all of a sudden we couldn't do it. So finally, we found a lady that runs People in Motion, which is a handicap, and told her our story. She says, I'm more than welcome to help you. So she helped us write the grant. We got a $10,000 grant. $7,000 of it went to equipment. $2,000 went for supplies to build ramps for businesses so handicapped people could get into it. $1,000 went to her for administration. 5 months after we started doing the project, she came up and gave us $1,000 back, said, I don't need it. To this day, we're working with her. We've done things with her. She will give us her number when we need it. you know, but it's got to be on the up and up. So there are organizations out there that can help you. Now, one of the organizations that we work with and has been very successful is the seniors' homes. Their operating outfits have money. I had a lady come to me and says, "Can you build me 4 8-foot by 2-foot cedar planters?" I said, "Yeah, probably." So I went up there and we looked at it and I said, "Yeah, we could do that." I said, "You got a budget?" "Yeah." She says, "I got a budget." I said, "Well, what's your budget?" She says, "I got $10,000. I said, "What?" "Yeah, I got $10,000 to spend on these planters." I said, "Well, I don't think it's going to take 10 grand. Anyway, it ended up being 5,500, right? So she had $4,500 left that she wanted to build some other stuff, but she stumbled around too long. She didn't spend the money fast enough, so they took it away from her. Another senior outfit came to me and wanted to refinish their outside benches that have been out there for 14 years. We looked at them. I said, she says, "Well, how much is it going to cost?" I said, "About $630 a bench." She says, "That's not good enough." I said, "What do you mean not good enough? You need more." I said, "What do you mean?" "We'll give you $1,000 per bench." All we had to do, we took them apart, which took us 20 minutes, took them to the shop, ran them through the planer, put a router on each and restained them. We probably had 3 hours per bench into it. We've since done their dining room tables. We've had another one that just phoned us. Now, just not to drag this on, but I'll give you guys an idea on something that just came to me, and it's a good one. Everybody has a pub in their town, right? Most of the pubs do a meat draw, right? I had a guy approach me last Saturday and say, "You want to do the meat draws like you did with the Lions Club for me?" I said, "Oh, maybe." He said, "Yeah." He says, "You're not with the Lions anymore." And I said, "No." He says, "I know," because he said, "I'm trying to get a hold of you. I thought you died or something." He said, "Are you a non-for-profit?" And I said, "Yeah." He says, "Okay, we're going to talk." When we did the meat draws for him before, in 2.5 hours, 4 guys would go in there and sell tickets. He would buy us a beer if we wanted it, or a Coke or whatever. We'd come out of there with anywhere from $300 to $700 in 2.5 hours on a Saturday afternoon. Times that by 4, guys. How much is that a month? Times that by 6. That's $6,000 or $7,000 of easy money. And everybody has a pub that wants to do a meat draw. He does. He buys the meat, everything. We get the money for the 50-50. Any profit money after the meat draw, we split half and half. Pretty simple. Use his number. All we got to do is show up, wear our shirts, and bullshit with the guys in there, because you'll get lots of guys coming to join the shed. It's a new one. It's a good one. If you get a chance, try to explore it. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing. So very quickly to wrap up, we haven't talked 50-50 draws. We haven't talked bottle drives. Like, there are endless possibilities, right? You put your thinking caps on for how you raise money on a day-to-day basis, but it's the ask. It's the ask that's critical. And if I can just get you to take these key things away with you, there are no numbers without stories. It's your stories that matter. So remember, KISS, keep it simple, shedders. Who are you? What does your shed do? What does it matter? And then the ask. And you are all experts now on how quickly and easily and simply you can craft that ask. And now your job is to go back to your sheds and for you to nail 3 asks, have them maybe even posted on the bulletin board in your shed, so that no matter who comes along who says, "Hey, so do you guys need anything?" you have your hell to the yeah ready to go. Thank you to my speakers. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being awesome and engaging. I hope there were lots of things that you can take away that are real. And of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't say, you know where to now find me, right? So reach out. Thank you.
And now I'm going to stand between you and food for just one quick second. The video studio that we've been talking about for the last couple of days is now, we've hit capacity. Tyler has done 22 interviews over the last 48 hours with many of you. If by some chance you were one of those interviews and you did not fill out one of these forms, the release forms, please come and do that. They're just over at my desk. We really need those. Thanks so much.